Know your place. Those three words weren't whispered in a dark alley. They were spat in broad daylight inside a congressional hearing. From President Donald Trump, the 47th Commander-in-Chief, to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. In a nation where over 60% of Americans say they've lost faith in government, this moment wasn't just another shouting match. It was a flashpoint, a raw clash between arrogance and justice, between a man who believed power bent the truth and a woman who refused to bend at all. Millions tuned in live. Millions more would replay it again and again, shocked by the venom, stunned by the fire. This wasn't debate. This was war of words, and it began with just three. Know your place. The chamber froze. Cameras zoomed in. The nation watched as President Donald Trump leaned back in his chair, lips curling into that trademark smirk, as if daring the world to challenge him. The gavel had barely struck when he cut across the chair's opening remarks, his voice booming through the hall. Enough of the formality. Let's get to the point. Congresswoman Crockett doesn't belong here. She's loud. She's angry. And frankly, she's out of her league. Gas rippled through the chamber. Some chuckled nervously. Others shifted uncomfortably. The insult wasn't subtle. It was a knife, sharpened for spectacle. Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. Her eyes locked onto his, dark and steady, like steel meeting fire. She rose deliberately, the scrape of her chair echoing like a challenge. "Mr. President," she said, her voice carrying both calm and fire, "the only one out of their league here is a man who mistakes cruelty for strength. You wanted attention? Well, you've got mine." The room erupted. Half the chamber gasped. The other half burst into applause. Trump waved a hand dismissively, his face flushed red. "Save your speeches. You're here because you want a stage, Jasmine. Admit it. You want the cameras, the headlines, the pity. But you don't belong in the arena with lions." Jasmine's lips curled into a sharp smile. "And yet here I stand, staring down a man who roars like a lion, but acts like a coward." The words hit like gunfire. Reporters scrambled with their pens, fingers flying across keyboards. The clip was already going viral, replayed and dissected before the hearing even moved forward. Trump leaned forward now, his hands gripping the desk. His voice dropped lower, sharper. "You think you're clever. You think your little theatrics mean something. But I built this country back up with my hands. People love me. They love what I've done. You're nothing but noise." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "Noise? Mr. President, it's called truth. And the truth has a way of echoing long after the lies are gone." The chamber roared again. Some cheering, some booing. The chair banged the gavel in vain, shouting for order, but order was already gone. This wasn't a hearing anymore. This was combat. The cameras zoomed tighter, broadcasting every flicker of expression to millions of living rooms across America. Trump's jaw clenched, his cheeks puffing with rage. Jasmine stood tall, her voice slicing through the chaos. "You can interrupt the chair. You can throw your insults. But let me be clear. I will not be silenced. Not by you. Not by your arrogance. And not by the false crown of power you wear." A hush fell, heavy and electric. Trump's response was slow, deliberate, venomous. "You know what you are, Crockett? You're an angry little girl playing dress-up with justice. You'll never tear me down. You'll never touch me." It was the match to the powder keg. Jasmine's voice thundered back, stronger than before, her fist slamming against the desk with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. "Then hear me now, Mr. President. Before this chamber, before this nation, I swear I will strip away your mask. Every lie, every abuse, every ounce of false glory you cling to, I will tear it down until all that's left is the truth. And you will face it." The air shook. Reporters' faces were pale with awe, their pens almost useless now, because no written word could match the heat of that moment. Trump opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Just silence. For the briefest second, the master of spectacle had been disarmed. The silence broke with shouting, lawmakers calling for order, aides rushing, security tense at the edges. But at the center of it all, two figures stood locked in battle. Trump, the smirking titan of power, and Jasmine Crockett, the unyielding warrior of justice. And in that clash of voices, America saw more than politics. They saw a fight for the soul of the nation itself. The cameras lingered, replaying Jasmine's words again and again, as if to etch them into history. It was only the beginning. And as this battle unfolds, word for word, blow for blow, don't miss what happens next. Subscribe now to Harrison Stories and witness every chapter of this fight for justice. The echo of Jasmine's vow still hung in the air when Trump leaned forward again, refusing to let silence claim him. His eyes narrowed, his voice booming with the weight of office. You think I'm afraid of you? Afraid of some junior congresswoman shouting into microphones? He jabbed a finger across the chamber. I am the President of the United States. I don't answer to children. The insult landed heavy, a slap across the air. Gasps rose from the crowd. Jasmine didn't blink. She leaned forward, fire dancing in her voice. Children? No, Mr. President. Children don't cage families. Children don't abuse power. Children don't hide behind the title of Commander-in-Chief to excuse their lies. That takes a coward. And you've mastered it. The room erupted. Applause thundered from one side of the chamber, while boos and jeers rose from the other. The clash of voices was deafening, an arena more than a hearing room. Trump's lips twisted into a sneer. You want to call me a coward? Tell me, Congresswoman, who rebuilt the economy? Who kept America safe? Who put this nation back on the map? It sure as hell wasn't you. You were too busy whining on social media, begging for retweets like a spoiled teenager. A roar of laughter came from his allies, clapping their hands against the desks. For a moment, the mockery echoed like victory, but Jasmine's smile didn't waver. Her reply came fast, slicing through the noise. You rebuilt nothing. You burned bridges. You fueled hatred. You made America a circus and crowned yourself the clown. Safe? You divided us so deeply that families don't speak at the dinner table. Power isn't the same as leadership, Mr. President, and respect isn't something you can buy with fear. The chamber shook with another wave of applause, louder this time, more sustained. Trump slammed a palm down on the desk, the crack reverberating like a gunshot. You dare lecture me on respect? I've stood on stages with kings, generals, titans of industry. And you, his voice dripped with scorn. You think shouting louder makes you bigger? You think throwing insults makes you stronger? You don't intimidate me, Crockett. You embarrass yourself. Jasmine's voice rose sharp as a blade. Embarrass myself? No, Mr. President. What embarrasses this nation is a leader who hides behind the throne, who mistakes bullying for bravery. You swagger like a lion, but every roar masks fear. You're not the strong man you pretend to be. You're a frightened man clutching at power because you know without it, you are nothing. The chamber exploded. People were on their feet, some pounding desks, others shouting for silence. The chair hammered the gavel, his voice straining for order. But order was long gone. The cameras caught it all. Viewers across America saw the sweat glisten at Trump's temple, the tightening of his jaw, the flicker in his eyes that betrayed the crack in his armor. He leaned back, forcing a laugh, though it carried no humor. You really believe you're the hero here, don't you? You think yelling at me makes you some kind of savior? Let me remind you, Congresswoman, you answer to me. You serve at the pleasure of the people, and they chose me to lead. Not you. Me. Jasmine stepped forward, her voice steady, rising above the chaos. You're right about one thing, Mr. President. I serve the people. That's why I stand here, because they deserve the truth. And if you think hiding behind the title shields you from accountability, then you've already lost. Leadership isn't fear. It isn't arrogance. It's service. And I will not bow to a man who serves only himself. A pause, brief but electric. Trump's face flushed crimson, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the desk. He leaned in, spitting the words through clenched teeth. You're playing with fire, Crockett, and fire burns. Jasmine met his glare without flinching. Then let it burn, because I'd rather stand in the fire for truth than cower in the shadows of your lies. The roar that followed was deafening. Viewers at home clutched their remotes, unable to look away. The hashtag surged, trending worldwide in minutes. Dasher's Trump vs. Crockett, Strasser Fire and Truth. Commentators scrambled to cut in, but the networks refused. This was too raw, too real, too explosive to interrupt. The chamber was no longer a chamber. It was an inferno. Trump, the seasoned showman, found himself locked in a duel where every word was a blow, every sentence a strike. And Jasmine Crockett, the so-called junior congresswoman, was standing toe-to-toe with the most powerful man in the world, unflinching, unyielding, unstoppable. The first clash was over. The war had just begun. Jasmine didn't waste a heartbeat. She reached for the folder on her desk, fingers steady, movements deliberate. The camera zoomed in as she lifted a single sheet of paper, holding it high enough for the lights to catch. "This," she said, her voice cutting through the uproar like a blade, "isn't opinion. It isn't spin. It is evidence." The chamber fell into an uneasy hush. Trump leaned forward, squinting, trying to pierce the moment with disdain. But Jasmine pressed on, her tone unwavering. "Official records. White House communication logs. They show phone calls, dozens of them, made during the exact hours you claimed you were unaware of the violence breaking out. Calls made to your closest allies. Calls that prove you weren't sitting idly by. You were directing the chaos." A gasp tore through the room. For the first time, Trump's mouth fell silent. His jaw tightened, his eyes darted. Just for a moment. The cameras caught it, broadcasting the flicker across millions of screens. Jasmine didn't blink. "You told America you didn't know. You lied. And now the truth sits in black and white, in front of the people you swore to serve." The silence shattered. Shouts erupted from both sides, some demanding answers, others screaming, "Lies, lies!" The chair pounded his gavel, but the roar was too fierce, a storm now loose inside the chamber. Trump's fist slammed the desk. The crack echoed like thunder. His voice surged, thick with rage. "Fabricated, fake documents. This is another witch hunt, another pathetic attempt to smear me because you can't beat me fair and square." Jasmine leaned in, eyes blazing. "Witch hunt? You want to talk about witch hunts? The only witch here is the man who casts spells of fear and division, who tricks the people with smoke and mirrors. But the curtain is coming down, Mr. President, and when it falls, you'll be exposed." Trump rose half out of his seat, his hand gripping the edge of the desk as if to keep himself from lunging forward. His voice thundered. "You think you can intimidate me with papers? With lies typed on government letterhead? You're a disgrace, Crockett. A disgrace to your office, a disgrace to your country." The chamber shook. Cameras snapped. The sound of overlapping voices was deafening, but Jasmine stood her ground, her words slicing through the chaos. "I don't need to intimidate you. The truth does that all on its own. Look around, Mr. President. Listen. The people are watching, the world is watching, and no title, no throne, no fist on a desk can silence what's written in ink." The audience in the gallery roared. Applause crashed against shouts of outrage. The chair's gavel pounded, useless against the wave. On social media, the firestorm ignited. Screens across America lit up with hashtags. Trump vs. Crockett, Chuck's Justice, First Strike, Chaoshan, Lies Exposed. Tens of thousands of tweets per second, clips already going viral. News anchors whispered into earpieces, producers scrambling, "Stay with it. Don't cut away. This is history." Trump's face reddened, his lips curling back into a snarl. "You want to play this game? Fine. But understand this. You're not hurting me. You're hurting America. Every time you smear me, you smear the millions who voted for me, and they will not forgive you." Jasmine's reply was steady, resolute. "No, Mr. President, I am not hurting America. I am protecting her. Protecting her from leaders who believe loyalty means obedience. Protecting her from men who confuse power with righteousness. Protecting her from you." The room fell into a stunned stillness, just for a breath. Then, like thunder rolling after lightning, the uproar returned. Trump shook his head, laughing bitterly, trying to mask the wound with mockery. "Protecting America? Don't flatter yourself. You're nothing more than a mouthpiece for the radical left, desperate for attention, a footnote in history that nobody will remember." Jasmine raised her voice, unwavering. riding above the noise. If I am a footnote, then let it be written in bold ink that I stood here and spoke truth when it mattered most, that I refused to bow to fear or to the man who wielded it like a weapon. The words struck like thunderclaps. The chamber was alive, buzzing, vibrating with fury, awe, disbelief. And across millions of screens, Americans over 50, those who had lived through riots, assassinations, the civil rights movement, wars both foreign and domestic, leaned forward. They felt the weight of history pressing down, the echo of old struggles rising again in the voices of today. Trump glared across the room, chest heaving, fingers twitching against the desk. Jasmine's eyes met his, steady as stone. The storm had only just broken. And then Trump bared his teeth. "You want to talk about truth?" he growled, his voice booming. "Let's talk about you, Jasmine Crockett, the self-righteous warrior of justice. How many skeletons are in your closet? How many scandals do you try to bury while you stand here pretending to be a saint?" The chamber gasped. Trump didn't stop. He leaned forward, spitting fire. "Your failed bills, your pathetic fundraising numbers, the whispers about your personal life. Shall I go on? Because the American people deserve to know who's lecturing their president. Not some angel, not some savior, just another career politician desperate for attention." The allies behind him roared their approval, pounding their desks in rhythm, a mob dressed in suits. The sound echoed like drums of war. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She tilted her head, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across her face. Then she laughed. Not a polite laugh, not nervous, a sharp, cutting laugh that sliced through the uproar. "Is that all you've got?" she asked, her voice dripping with mockery. "Because if this is your big weapon, gossip, rumors, playground taunts, then you've already lost." Trump slammed a fist on the desk. "Don't play games with me." But Jasmine's voice only rose higher, stronger. "Failed bills? Every bill I've written was about protecting people who don't have the luxury of golden towers and private jets. Fundraising? I don't sell pieces of my soul to billionaires. And my personal life? That's the oldest trick in the book. Tear a woman down when you can't defeat her with facts." The chamber erupted again, but Jasmine pressed forward, her eyes locked on Trump. "You call me desperate for attention? The only desperation in this room is yours. You can't stand being challenged by someone who won't bow. That's why you dig through the mud, because it's the only ground you feel safe in." A roar of approval swept across the gallery. Viewers at home saw it clearly. Trump's scowl deepening, the faint twitch of his jaw as the counterpunch landed. And then, like wolves scenting blood, Trump's allies joined in. One senator shouted, "Sit down, Congresswoman. You're out of your league." Another sneered, "Why don't you focus on your district instead of wasting our time with your theatrics?" The chamber turned into a chorus of jeers and chants, a coordinated attempt to drown her out. The chair's gavel banged furiously. "Order! Order!" But his voice was swallowed by the noise. For a moment it seemed the mob had her surrounded, but Jasmine straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and let her voice cut through the chaos like a trumpet. "You can all shout, you can all jeer, you can pound your desks until your knuckles bleed, but you cannot erase the truth, and the louder you scream, the more guilty you look." The chamber froze, just for a breath. Trump's face twisted with fury. "Don't lecture me about guilt. You're nothing more than a puppet, a fraud who hides behind moral speeches while the real work of governing is done by others. You've never built anything. You've never sacrificed anything. You only tear down." Jasmine's retort was swift, her voice sharp as steel. "Sacrifice? I've sacrificed peace of mind, privacy, safety, because I refuse to stay silent while you trample justice. Built anything? Yes, I built trust with people who've been ignored for generations. Something you've never even tried. And fraud? The only fraud in this room is the man who sold the people a lie and called it leadership." The gallery erupted again, shouts, clapping, chants colliding in a storm. The chair's gavel pounded so hard it looked as if the wood might crack. "Order! Order! This is the United States Congress, not a circus. But the press outside already had their headlines drafted. The most chaotic hearing in American history. Some reporters whispered into cameras, their voices shaking with adrenaline. We are witnessing something unprecedented. A president under siege in his own chamber. A congresswoman standing unflinching against the storm. Trump, breathing hard, jabbed a finger toward Jasmine. You'll regret this. You'll regret every word. Because when you go up against me, you don't just fight a man, you fight a movement. And that movement doesn't forgive. Jasmine leaned forward, her voice like a dagger. Then let your movement watch. Let them see their so-called leader crumble under truth. Because no matter how big your crowd, no matter how loud your mob, justice does not bow. Not to you, not to anyone. The chamber was chaos, the gavel pounding, voices clashing, cameras flashing. And across America, millions leaned closer to their screens, unable to look away. This wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was a battlefield. And Jasmine Crockett was proving she could fight without fear. The war of words raged on. But if you don't want to miss the next blow, the next revelation, make sure you subscribe to Harrison Stories, where every twist of this historic showdown comes alive. Jasmine's hand slid beneath the stack of papers before her, pulling free a folder marked with the unmistakable red stripe of government secrecy. The sight alone sent a ripple through the chamber. Cameras zoomed in. Gasps filled the air. She rose from her seat, her voice steady, her words deliberate. Mr. President, these are classified memos, internal directives signed under your authority, directives that reveal how power was bent, twisted, abused, not for the people, but for your own survival. The room seemed to stop breathing. Jasmine lifted one page, the bold heading visible even from afar. Here is an order pressuring federal agencies to withhold disaster relief funds until governors showed loyalty. Hunme. Here is another, using intelligence briefings not for national defense, but to target political opponents. The chamber erupted. Shouts ricocheted off the marble walls. Reporters clutched their phones, racing to push alerts. Millions of viewers across the country leaned forward, pulses quickening. Trump's face drained, then flushed crimson. He shot to his feet, his voice a roar. Lies, fabricated, treasonous garbage pulled from the sewer. This is nothing but a smear job, a traitor script written by America's enemies. His fist slammed the desk again, rattling microphones. You dare wave stolen documents in my face? You dare accuse the President of the United States of crimes with no proof but your crooked imagination? Jasmine didn't flinch. She raised another sheet, her voice cutting sharper than any gavel. Not imagination. Signatures, dates, directives with your name etched in ink. You call it treason? The treason is here, Mr. President. Every order that placed loyalty above lives. Every abuse that mocked the oath you swore. The roar inside the chamber became unbearable. Trump leaned across his desk, jabbing a finger toward her, his voice cracking with fury. You're the traitor. You and your ilk, feeding lies to the public, undermining their president, tearing the country apart piece by piece. Jasmine stepped forward, defiance blazing in her eyes. The country was never yours to tear apart. You treat it like property, but America is not your empire. You swore an oath to serve the people, and every page in my hand proves how you broke it. The tension snapped like a wire. Trump surged forward, rising fully to his feet. Jasmine mirrored him, standing tall, papers still clutched high. For a heartbeat, they were only inches apart, voices colliding like thunder. You'll regret this, Trump roared. Not as much as you'll regret every lie, Jasmine shot back. The chamber exploded into pandemonium. Lawmakers shouted. The gallery screamed. Reporters scrambled. The chair's gavel pounded wildly, but the sound vanished under the hurricane of voices. And then, movement. Black-suited security officers stepped into the chamber, forming a line between the two adversaries, hands hovering at their waists. Their presence sent another shockwave through the room. For the first time in history, the sitting president and a congresswoman had to be physically kept apart inside the halls of power. The cameras caught it all. Trump's face twisted in rage. Jasmine's unwavering defiance. The thin barrier of guards holding back the collapse of order. Across the nation, silence gripped living rooms and bars and office spaces. Elderly men leaned closer to their televisions. Women clasped their hands at kitchen tables. Families froze mid-meal. America was watching two titans clash: justice against power, truth against defiance, and no one could look away. The chair's voice cracked through the storm, desperate and shaking. "This is a congressional hearing. I demand order." But there was no order, only history unfolding. Trump's final words thundered across the chamber, his face twisted with fury. "You will pay for this betrayal." Jasmine's reply landed like a hammer. "The only betrayal here is the one committed against the people, and the day of reckoning is no longer coming. It's here." The nation held its breath, because this wasn't politics anymore. It was survival, and the battlefield had been drawn in black and white ink. Trump straightened his jacket, breathing hard, eyes darting across the chamber like a predator cornered but unwilling to submit. Then his tone shifted. Less fury, more theater. He raised his hands high, projecting his voice as if to a stadium, not a congressional hearing. "Ladies and gentlemen, patriots of this great nation, we are witnessing the single most corrupt attack in American history. This is not about me. This is about you, about the millions who voted, the millions who believed, the millions who built this country with their hands and their faith." The chamber roared with mixed reactions. Some of his allies pounded desks in unison, echoing chants. Others groaned, rolling their eyes at the spectacle. But Trump pushed forward, commanding the air as though the marble walls were his campaign stage. "They don't just want to silence me. They want to silence you. They want to strip America of its greatness, of its strength, of its voice. And he thumped his chest with a fist, "I will never let that happen." It was a rally cry, a war drum. His supporters cheered as though the chamber had turned into an arena. "USA! USA!" rang from the back rows, echoing off the walls, half defiant, half delirious. Jasmine stood motionless, letting the noise rise and crest. Her eyes scanned the room, calculating, calm, waiting for the right moment to strike. Then she spoke, her voice clear, slicing through the din like a bell. "Mr. President, this chamber is not your rally ground. You are not standing on campaign soil. You are standing under oath. And under oath, slogans mean nothing. Only the law matters." The chanting faltered as if her words pulled the air from their lungs. She raised the folder again, the classified pages rustling like storm winds. "You cry about saving America while these documents show you tearing her apart. You speak of loyalty, but the law demands accountability. And in this chamber, under these lights, with these records, you cannot hide behind chance. You cannot shout down justice." The gallery erupted, this time louder for her than for him. Trump's face hardened, his smile twitching at the edges. He gestured wildly, sweeping his arm across the chamber. "She doesn't care about you. She doesn't care about your jobs, your families, your safety. She only cares about power. She wants to turn this country into a playground for radicals. Don't be fooled by her speeches. They're poison wrapped in silk." But Jasmine struck again, her tone cold, judicial, relentless. "Poison is a president who tells people disaster relief depends on obedience. Poison is a leader who abuses intelligence briefings for political revenge. Poison is corruption parading as patriotism. And today, for the first time, that poison has been bottled, labeled, and held to the light of day." The words landed like hammer blows. Some of Trump's allies exchanged uneasy glances. A senator shifted in his seat, his eyes flicking away from Trump's defiant posture to the damning pages in Jasmine's hand. The tide was shifting. Jasmine pressed harder. "The Constitution doesn't bend for fear. It doesn't bow to popularity contests. It doesn't tremble before mobs chanting in unison. It stands. And today it demands that we all stand with it, even if it means standing against you." The chamber was electric. The chair's gavel pounded again, desperate to contain the rising storm, but no one was listening. Not anymore. Trump slammed both palms against the desk, rising half out of his seat. "You're a fraud. You twist the law like clay. You hide behind paper because you can't win with the people. The people are with me. They always will be." Jasmine's eyes flashed, her voice unwavering. Then why are they wavering here right now? Why are lawmakers who once cheered you now shifting in their seats? Because deep down, even they know, law is stronger than lies, and history is stronger than fear. The silence that followed was brief but heavy, like the pause before a bomb detonates. The chamber had become a pressure cooker. Every word, every gesture, every glance was another tick on the clock. Trump stood tall, fists clenched, eyes burning. Jasmine faced him with documents in hand, her presence unshaken. Between them, the air seemed to vibrate with a tension that could ignite at any second. And all across America, millions watched, breath held, knowing the explosion was coming. Because this was no longer just a clash of words, it was a countdown. And when it hit zero, nothing in the country would be the same. Jasmine let the silence hang for a heartbeat, just long enough to let the audience lean forward, hungry for what came next. Then with a calm precision that felt like pulling the pin on a grenade, she reached into her folder and pulled out a small silver device. "I think," she said softly, "it's time we all heard the truth," in his own voice. The chamber froze. She pressed play. Trump's voice filled the room, raw, unfiltered, unmistakable. The recording crackled, but the words were clear, brutal in their clarity. A statement flatly contradicting the polished, patriotic speeches he'd delivered to cameras for months. He wasn't talking to the people. He was scheming, mocking, reducing national crises to bargaining chips for personal gain. Gasps shot through the chamber like sparks. Heads whipped around. Senators leaned forward in disbelief. The press gallery erupted, pens scratching furiously, cameras zooming in as though the lens itself could taste the blood in the air. Trump's face drained of color, then flushed crimson. He lurched forward, slamming the desk with his fist. "Fake! It's fake! Fabricated garbage!" His voice cracked as he shouted, desperate to rise above the damning playback. "They'll believe anything if it hurts me. Don't listen. Don't you dare listen!" But the tape rolled on. Every second of it was a dagger, words dripping with arrogance, contempt for the very voters he claimed to love, mocking allies, dismissing laws as obstacles. Each phrase was a mirror shattering the image of the strong man he had crafted. The chair's gavel pounded, but it was drowned in the chaos. Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't even raise her voice. She simply let the audio play, standing with arms folded, her expression carved in steel. Every eye turned to her, but she didn't need to speak. The recording was louder than any argument she could have made. Trump's voice on the tape sneered about loyalty, laughed about bending rules, bragged about twisting justice to his favor. And then, the line that made the air in the chamber collapse into a collective gasp. "They'll never stop me. Not the courts, not Congress, not the Constitution. I'm untouchable." It was like a lightning strike. Half the room recoiled, the other half sat paralyzed. Trump shot up, almost stumbling from his seat. His face was pure panic dressed as rage. "Lies! Deep state lies! That's not me! That's not—" His voice cracked again, high-pitched, uncontrolled. He tried to roar over his own voice echoing from the speakers, but the sound betrayed him, turning into a shrill, frantic howl. Jasmine finally moved, stepping closer to the microphone. Her voice was low, calm, cutting. "Mr. President, these words came from your own mouth. America is listening. They know the truth now, not from me, but from you." The impact was nuclear. Across the nation, television networks looped the tape on repeat. Radios replayed it every half hour. Social media exploded into a frenzy of clips, hashtags, and memes. Untouchable trended instantly, drenched in irony. Families sat around their living rooms, stunned. Bar patrons shouted at screens, pointing, debating, swearing. College students live-streamed their reactions in disbelief. The recording wasn't just playing in the chamber. It was playing in every home, every diner, every phone. And for Trump, it was inescapable. He clutched the edge of the desk, knuckles white, shouting into the storm. "This is a witch hunt. You're all part of it. She's a liar, a fraud, a disgrace. You'll regret this. You'll all regret this." "Oh no, But Jasmine didn't let him regain his ground. Each sentence she spoke was another incision, another precise strike. You call it fake, yet your voice betrays you. You call it treason, yet treason is mocking the Constitution you swore to defend. You call it a witch hunt, yet the only witchcraft here is the spell you tried to cast over this nation, and it has been broken. The chamber shook with noise, applause, shouts, the pounding of fists, the clatter of reporters rushing to file breaking alerts. Trump's image, polished through rallies, gilded by slogans, protected by sheer force of will, was unraveling in real time. And Jasmine knew it. She leaned closer to the microphone, her words deliberate, venom wrapped in velvet. You built your empire on words. Now your own words will be the wrecking ball that brings it down. The gallery erupted, the press practically vibrating with the hunger of history being written before their eyes. Trump sagged back into his chair, still shouting, but the fire was flickering, his voice drowned out by the echoes of his own damning confession, playing again and again across every speaker in America. The second fatal blow had landed, and the nation would never hear his voice the same way again. Inside the chamber, the air had changed. What was once a battlefield tilted in Trump's favor was now cracking beneath his feet. The recording had lodged itself into every mind, and the silence after its final echo was heavier than any gavel. One senator shifted uncomfortably, then another. Whispers rippled through the rows of lawmakers like a current reversing its flow. Faces that once radiated loyalty now wore hesitation, calculation, even disgust. The press gallery was alive with scribbles and camera flashes, but what truly struck was the sudden absence of certainty around Trump. His fortress of power, built on intimidation and blind allegiance, had sprung its first leaks. He sensed it instantly. Trump leaned forward, his voice dripping venom, trying to regain command. Don't be fooled by this circus act. Jasmine Crockett is nothing more than a loudmouth opportunist who thrives on lies. She's a disgrace to this chamber, a stain on our politics, a puppet of the radicals. His finger jabbed the air toward her, a trembling weapon meant to diminish. You want justice? He snarled. Look at her. She's the real criminal here. But the words meant to crush fell flat. Jasmine didn't flinch. She stood tall, her eyes locked on him, her stillness louder than his rage. Every insult hurled at her only bounced back, like fists striking stone. And in that moment, it was clear. The more Trump screamed, the smaller he appeared. The audience watching at home saw it. The voters felt it. The nation that once fed on his bravado now saw desperation leaking from every syllable. Across social media, hashtags flipped like dominoes. Trump v. Crockett was still burning hot, but now new ones surged. Desperate Donald, rack a Crockett strong. Clips of Trump's trembling voice went viral in real time, spliced against Jasmine's icy composure. In the chamber, the tide grew stronger. A senior senator, once a reliable Trump ally, folded his arms and leaned back with a grim frown. Another shook her head in disbelief. Even those who had cheered him minutes ago now avoided his gaze, unwilling to be dragged down with him. Trump, sensing the shift, lashed harder. You're nothing but a mouthpiece, he shouted. You hide behind papers and lies because you're too weak to face me like a man. The insult rang hollow, outdated, even pathetic. Gasps rose, not in her direction, but his. Jasmine stepped forward, calm, deliberate, her voice slicing through the noise. Weakness, she said evenly, is hiding behind power. Weakness is shouting when the truth exposes you. Weakness is thinking fear can silence justice. The chamber erupted, not with chaos this time, but with applause. It wasn't everyone, but it was enough. Enough to shift the balance, to send a chill through Trump's camp and ignite a spark in Jasmine's. Trump slammed his fist again, but it only echoed his frustration. The more he moved, the more unsteady he became, like a man flailing in quicksand. Every insult, every desperate claim only pulled him deeper, and Jasmine, steady, precise, cold, was the quicksand. For the first time, the story was no longer about Trump's dominance, his theatrics, his power to control the narrative. It was about Jasmine's unbreakable resolve, her refusal to be cowed, her rising stature as the chamber's moral anchor. The cameras captured everything. The trembling lip at the edge of Trump's fury, the clenched jaw of a man losing his grip, the unshakable calm of the woman who refused to bend. Outside, the public roared. Protesters gathered in streets, signs waving, chants rising. News anchors spoke of a turning point. Analysts debated whether Trump's allies would abandon him to save themselves. The crack in his armor was no longer hidden. It was a fracture spreading fast. And inside the chamber, Jasmine simply stood, her silence more powerful than his tirade. The tide had turned. Trump's empire of intimidation was collapsing in plain sight. And Jasmine Crockett, the warrior of justice, was now standing on higher ground, untouchable, immovable, undeniable. The battle was far from over, but from this moment forward, it would be fought on her terms. Trump refused to cede ground. His fury simmered, coiling tighter with every second Jasmine held him at bay. He stood again, pacing like a predator pacing a cage, ready to strike, to dominate, to turn the chamber into his personal arena. "You think this is over, Crockett?" he barked, voice laced with venom. "You think your little tapes and documents change the truth? You're nothing but a fraud hiding behind lies, spinning stories while real men fight for this country?" Jasmine's eyes met his, unwavering, sharp as a scalpel. She didn't flinch. "Real men," she repeated, her voice icy, precise. "Real men do not fear accountability. Real men do not tear the Constitution for personal gain. Real men do not bribe loyalty and call it patriotism. You are none of those things, Mr. President." The chamber erupted into murmurs, some gasps, some stifled applause. His allies hissed, trying to drown her words with shouted interruptions. But Jasmine allowed no gaps, no pause in the logic, no room for manipulation. Trump lunged verbally, hurling accusations with surgical precision. "You're biased. You've colluded with media. You're spreading propaganda. You're part of the deep state that wants to destroy me and everything I built." Every accusation landed like a fist swinging at invisible targets. But Jasmine was ready. She leaned forward, her tone deliberate, slow, and deliberate enough to make every listener hang on her words. "Colluded? Propaganda? Deep state? Mr. President, we are speaking under oath, not in a studio, not on a campaign stage. And under this oath, truth is the only thing that matters. Every claim you make here can be verified, and every claim you've made today, in this chamber, has crumbled under scrutiny." He roared, slamming the desk, echoing like thunder. "You're lying, all of you. You're out to get me." But Jasmine didn't hesitate. Each sentence she spoke was a precise jab, a counterpunch, leaving no opening. "You call me lying," she said, voice steady, "while your own recordings and documents prove otherwise. You call me biased, yet you are the one hiding from facts, twisting the narrative, trying to drown the nation in your version of events. I speak facts, you speak fear. And fear is not leadership." The chamber vibrated with tension. Some lawmakers shifted uneasily, others scribbled notes, and the audience, millions watching nationwide, was captivated. Social media exploded. Clips of Jasmine delivering cold, unyielding rebuttals went viral in seconds. Hashtags like, verbal boxing, Crockett vs. Trump, and facts over fear spiked. Trump, sensing his momentum slipping, intensified the assault. "You're weak. You're dishonest. You're a puppet. You can't stop me." But Jasmine, unshaken, continued her relentless offensive. "I am not here to stop you. I am here to uphold the law. And if stopping corruption, lies, and abuse is what it takes, then call me what you will. The American people are listening. They see who stands firm and who crumbles under scrutiny." The shouting escalated. Words collided like fists in a ring. Every interruption Trump attempted was met with sharp rebuttals. Every attempt to intimidate countered with calm authority. Minutes stretched into hours. The chamber air became thick with hostility, sweat, and the tension of two wills clashing. Every movement, every glance was a strike, every syllable a punch landing or being blocked. It was verbal combat at its most brutal, a boxing match with no gloves, no breaks, and stakes higher than any championship. Trump's voice grew hoarse, his face reddened, his eyes darting for allies to rally to him. But Jasmine anticipated every tactic. Her precision, patience, and unyielding calm made the president flinch before the words even landed. Some allies began to falter. Whispers spread through the chamber. Heads shook subtly, doubts creeping into the minds of those who had once cheered for him. The balance of power, carefully built over years of dominance and loyalty, was cracking under the relentless pressure of truth and resolve. And Jasmine, standing in the center, cold, deliberate, unbreakable, knew she had reached a critical moment. "This is not about politics," and she said, voice carrying across the chamber like steel cutting glass. "This is about justice. This is about truth. And if you cannot face it, Mr. President, if you cannot meet accountability, then history will remember who stood firm and who fell apart under its weight." Trump's mouth opened, closed, opened again, but no words could land with the same force as hers. His arsenal of accusations, once a wall, was crumbling into debris. The public outside, millions watching in awe, disbelief, and fury, called it exactly what it was: a verbal boxing match. Every jab, every counter, every precise delivery of fact against fear kept them glued to screens, holding their breath as the fight of wills continued to escalate without pause. Hours passed. Exhaustion crept in, but neither side yielded. The chamber, thick with tension, had become a crucible where the truth and ambition collided. And in that crucible, one figure, Jasmine Crockett, was emerging stronger, sharper, unshakable, and unstoppable. The battle of wills had reached its apex, and the world waited. Jasmine's lips curved just slightly, a controlled, almost imperceptible smile. She knew the moment had come. From beneath the stack of papers, she pulled a folder marked with a simple red tab. Inside, the weight of a single sheet could topple a man's empire. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady, commanding, "I present to you the key witness, someone who saw every directive, every instruction, every moment of decision that went against the law and against the people." A hush fell over the chamber. The press leaned in, cameras whirred, security eyes sharpened, aware of the gravity. The door opened and a figure walked in. Every step was deliberate. The witness, a senior aide who had once served in the White House, paused in the center, gaze meeting each lawmaker. Trump froze. His mouth opened, but no words came immediately. A flicker of panic danced in his eyes. He tried to mask it with bravado. This is a setup, a staged performance. You've orchestrated this." But his voice betrayed him. The slight tremor at the end of his sentence spoke louder than his words ever could. The chamber noticed. The audience noticed. The nation noticed. The witness took the oath, hand raised, voice clear, unwavering. "I was present in every meeting referenced in these documents. I witnessed the directives, I heard the conversations, and I can attest, the actions ordered by the president were designed to manipulate, coerce, and bypass legal obligations for personal and political gain." A ripple ran through the chamber. Gasps, murmurs, and the clicking of pens scribbling furiously echoed. Trump's face turned red, then pale, then red again. He pounded the desk in a futile attempt to regain control. "This is lies, all lies. You're all conspiring against me." But Jasmine did not flinch. She stepped closer, voice sharp, precise. "Mr. President, the witness speaks from first-hand experience. Their testimony corroborates every document, every tape, every fact we have presented, and every attempt you make to deny it only confirms the reality of your actions." The chamber erupted, half in shock, half in disbelief, half in hushed awe at Jasmine's composure. Trump's allies shuffled in their seats, unease written across every face. Some avoided eye contact, others leaned in, hoping to catch a detail to cling to, but none could. The witness continued, each word another hammer driving deeper into the foundation of Trump's authority. "Every directive, every meeting, every instruction that compromised law or fairness was recorded. And I am here to tell the truth, regardless of personal consequences." The room was electric. A few lawmakers whispered to one another. Journalists whispered across microphones, trying to get every nuance into live broadcasts. The nation outside had stopped moving, eyes glued to every frame, every syllable, every inflection. Trump slammed his fist one final time, voice rising almost to a shriek. "This is fabricated. You're all liars. There's no truth in her claims. No truth." But his words fell like thin paper against a hurricane. The tremor in his voice betrayed his desperation. The witness's calm testimony acted like an anchor, steadying the chamber and shifting momentum irreversibly. Jasmine's gaze never left him. She spoke, deliberate, measured, deadly in its precision. "Truth is not fabricated, Mr. President, and fear will never make it disappear. Every person in this room, every American watching, now knows exactly who you are, and the law will ensure accountability." Trump's face contorted. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again, but the words were hollow. His usual dominance, his theatrics, his ability to control the room, all had slipped like sand through his fingers. The chamber seemed to pulse with the power of Jasmine's strategy. Every lawmaker who had wavered now leaned closer to reality, unable to deny the witness's account, unable to dismiss the irrefutable evidence before them. And Jasmine? She moved with measured grace, stepping toward the center of the floor, papers in hand, eyes blazing with the fire of a fighter who knew the endgame was near. The witness's final words reverberated through the chamber. "I stand by the truth, and I will testify under oath wherever necessary. Justice must prevail." The room went silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into murmurs, a chorus of acknowledgement, disbelief, and awe. Trump's credibility had taken another fatal blow, and Jasmine's ascent toward victory became unmistakable. She had advanced one more step toward justice, one more step toward the accountability that the nation demanded. The chamber was forever changed, and the nation outside, watching every second, could see. The scales were tipping, the tide had turned, and the fight for truth was winning. Jasmine stepped forward, her eyes sharp, her presence commanding. She had sensed the moment, the point where a single well-placed question could unravel the last threads of Trump's control. The room fell into near silence. Every lawmaker, every journalist, every citizen glued to the unfolding drama. "Mr. President," she began, her voice cold but resonant, "you've repeatedly claimed that every decision you made was for the good of the nation. Yet we have documents, recordings, and now a witness who confirms otherwise. How do you reconcile your statements with the facts?" Trump's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, tried to respond, but no words came out immediately. His lips trembled. Jasmine pressed on. "When you instructed your aides to withhold critical information from Congress, did you believe that you were still acting within the law, or were you knowingly bypassing it for personal gain?" The chamber held its collective breath. The question was simple, yet inescapable. The weight of truth pressed down on the room. Trump's face flushed red, veins standing out in his forehead. He barked, trying to regain control. "That's ridiculous, all of it. I was acting as president. I was protecting America." Jasmine didn't flinch. She leaned in slightly, letting her voice cut like a knife. "Protecting America? By obstructing oversight? By misleading the people? By treating the law as optional?" Trump's usual bravado faltered. His hands clenched, trembling slightly, as if gripping the air could anchor him to authority. Those claims are lies," he shouted, his voice cracking. "They're all lies. This is a witch hunt, a political hit job." But Jasmine was relentless. Each question was precise, unyielding, and surgical. "Mr. President, can you answer when you directed resources away from legal obligations for personal advantage? Can you explain why your public statements about these decisions contradict your private recordings? Do you deny that your own aides are now testifying under oath against your actions?" Each question landed with the force of a hammer. Each pause after her words was like the countdown of a knockout punch. Trump's face contorted in desperation. He waved his hands, shouting over the questions, but the words came out fragmented, shaky. I don't, they're twisting. You're twisting everything." The chamber erupted, not in applause, but in shocked murmurs, gasps, and whispers. Even some of his staunchest allies began to look away, unable to maintain the facade of loyalty in the face of unrelenting truth. Jasmine took a measured step closer, voice calm but filled with authority. Mr. President, your answers are evasive. Your denials crumble under scrutiny. You stand exposed, not as a leader, but as someone hiding behind power and lies. And the American people see it now. Trump's voice rose to a scream, cracking and hoarse. Liar! Fraud! This is unfair! But the more he shouted, the smaller he appeared. His fury could no longer hide his weakness. Every movement, every gesture screamed panic, desperation, a loss of control. The veneer of strength he had cultivated for decades was stripped away in plain sight. The chair pounded the gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order, but the room seemed alive with tension, electrified by the collapse of Trump's authority. Order! Order in the chamber! Yet Jasmine didn't stop. Her gaze never wavered. Mr. President, history will remember this moment. It will not remember bluster or intimidation. It will remember the truth. And the truth is, you have failed this chamber, this nation, and the law you swore to uphold. The words hung in the air like a final bell. Trump's shoulders slumped, his voice failing. He opened his mouth to shout, to argue, to assert control, but the words died on his lips. His eyes darted around, searching for support that no longer existed. The chamber, once a place of tense debate, erupted into a chorus of reactions. Some lawmakers whispered urgently to one another, some stared in disbelief, some nodded subtly, acknowledging the shift of power. The audience at home held their breath, screens reflecting the breakdown of a man who had once dominated the narrative without question. The chair finally stood, gavel raised, voice booming. President Trump, it is clear that your defenses have failed. The chamber recognizes that you have lost authority in this proceeding. This hearing is no longer about debate. It is about accountability. A stunned hush fell over the chamber. Millions watching across the country could feel the weight of the moment, the undeniable, irreversible turning point. And Jasmine? She remained calm, poised, unshaken. Her victory was not yet complete, but she had delivered the knockout. The momentum was hers. Every unanswered question, every faltering denial, every fragment of panic had solidified her as the unyielding force of justice. The nation exhaled collectively. The moment would be remembered, not for the chaos, but for the triumph of unwavering courage, the precision of intellect, and the unstoppable force of truth. In that room and across the country, one truth was undeniable. The fight for justice had reached a decisive peak, and Jasmine Crockett stood victorious in the arena of accountability. The gavel had fallen. The chamber, once a tempest of fury and fear, now reverberated with a charged silence, the kind that comes after a storm has passed. Reporters frantically typed, microphones hovered, and cameras captured every frame, every shadow of triumph and defeat. Across the nation, news outlets blared the same headline simultaneously. Crockett defeats Trump in historic congressional hearing. The words scrolled endlessly across screens. Social media exploded, trending hashtags lighting up like fireworks. Crockett victory, justice prevails, gosh, truth over power. Citizens shared clips, screenshots, and personal reactions, each echoing the same sentiment. The era of unchecked power had met its reckoning. Inside the chamber, Jasmine's presence was magnetic. She stood tall, shoulders squared, eyes bright with the intensity of someone who had walked through fire and emerged unscathed. Every step she took, every gesture she made, radiated calm authority. She wasn't just a victor. She was a symbol, the embodiment of integrity, courage, and unwavering justice. Trump, by contrast, slunk away. His once booming voice was now a low murmur. His posture slumped, a man defeated before the cameras and the nation alike. The power he wielded so effortlessly for decades had evaporated in the face of truth and relentless accountability. Each footstep echoed hollowly as he departed, leaving behind a room still charged with the aftershocks of his collapse. Journalists swarmed Jasmine, eager for sound bites, quotes, and reflections. She answered with poise, each word deliberate, measured, and impactful. Justice is not a political game. It is not determined by power, money, or fear. Today, we have shown that accountability is not optional. It is inevitable. The chamber, once a battlefield of verbal assaults and strategic maneuvering, had transformed into a theater of triumph. Jasmine's victory was more than personal. It was institutional. She had upheld the law, defended truth, and restored faith in the principles that underpin governance. Cameras panned across the room, capturing lawmakers, reporters, and aides alike. Faces that had been tense, anxious, or complicit now registered awe, respect, and even humility. Some approached Jasmine to offer quiet congratulations. Others merely nodded in acknowledgement, understanding that they had witnessed history. Outside, the American public watched in rapt attention. Streets buzzed with conversations, televisions in diners and homes replaying the final moments on loop. Citizens debated, cheered, and reflected on the significance. Jasmine's image flashed across screens, iconic and resolute, a symbol larger than any single headline. Meanwhile, Trump's retreat was starkly cinematic. His entourage shuffled behind him, the weight of failure evident in every step. Cameras captured the contrast, the chaotic departure of a man stripped of authority, juxtaposed against Jasmine's unwavering, upright presence. The optics were undeniable. One figure crumbled under exposure and scrutiny, the other rose luminous, a beacon of justice. Jasmine walked toward the exit, but the chamber's attention followed her every move. The press lights flared, capturing the moment as though the world itself paused to witness her passage. Her gaze was steady, eyes glinting with determination tempered by humility. As she reached the door, the light from the high windows fell upon her face. It was a moment almost cinematic in quality, golden rays framing her features, emphasizing the clarity of her victory. The glow symbolized more than personal success. It was justice illuminated, integrity prevailing over manipulation, truth shining over deception. In that instant, the story transcended politics. It became a narrative of morality, courage, and resilience. Jasmine's triumph was not merely a win in a single hearing. It was a triumph for the principle that no one, no matter how powerful, is above accountability. The chamber emptied slowly, the echoes of history lingering. Outside, the nation reflected, debated, and digested the gravity of what had transpired. And in every household, every newsroom, every live stream, the same truth resonated. Jasmine Crockett had stood unyielding, had faced power head-on, and had emerged victorious. She paused at the exit, the sunlight catching her hair and illuminating her determined gaze. The city beyond the chamber seemed to exhale collectively, as if acknowledging the arrival of a new era. A moment when justice was not just an abstract ideal, but a tangible, undeniable force. And in that final glow, one thought crystallized. This victory was not only hers. It belonged to the truth, to the law, and to every citizen who believed in justice. Jasmine Crockett stepped into history, triumphant, unwavering, and unforgettable. The fight had ended. The light had won. Jasmine Crockett's triumph reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the unwavering choice to stand for truth when the world pressures you to bow. Power and influence may intimidate, but integrity and justice endure. Every act of honesty, every voice raised for what is right, has the power to ripple beyond the moment, inspiring others to choose virtue over convenience. In a world often shadowed by compromise, let us carry the courage to act justly, speak boldly, and leave a legacy that uplifts humanity. If this battle stirred something in you, don't scroll past. Sit with it. Talk about it. Share it with someone who still believes justice matters. Like, comment, and send it to those who value truth over fear. Subscribe to Harrison Stories, where courage confronts power head-on. Hit the bell, because the next chapter is coming, and it won't pull punches. It's intense, and it might just change the way you see accountability. This story is a fictional dramatization, inspired by real courage and the fight for justice. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental, or meant to reflect the struggles for truth in the world. Thanks for watching. Justice isn't optional, it's demanded. This is Harrison Stories.